Big win by the Laval Rocket as they tie their series with Springfield at 1 game apiece. The way he's playing, if the Montreal Canadiens want to make trades at the draft, other teams are going to be asking for him. Who am I talking about? You'll find out. And one right winger looks like he's ready to make the jump to the Montreal Canadiens as of next season. How about that number 1 centerman or that 1B or that number 2? Does he currently play for another team? Is he RFA, the 23-year-old? You know who I'm talking about. What would it cost to get him? And what is PRP? That, and when will they play in the National Hockey League? All coming up on the Sick Podcast with Marinaro. Andrew Zadarnowski of Habs Eyes on the Prize will join me.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro. The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
And now a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Sports entertainment like no other. Brought to you by 8.6 Beer, intense by nature, and Lacage. If the last time you went to Lacage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Lacage. The menu will surprise you.
Welcome, I'm Marinaro, and yes, brought to you by 8.6 Beer, intense by nature, the beer for those who follow their instinct and live their passions in order to make their mark, and Lacage. If the last time you went to Lacage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you go back to Lacage. The menu will surprise you. Speaking of Lacage, they're all beautiful, by the way. There's one that's really, really nice at Place Belle in Laval, of course, where the Laval Rocket play, and the Rocket have now tied their series with Springfield at 1 game apiece. And they're going to be back in Laval for the next 3 games, with game 3 of that series slated for Wednesday night. So if you get to La Place Belle a little early, or at least you should, go to Lacage and have your pregame there. And the menu will probably surprise you. It no longer surprises me. It's a great atmosphere. You got some great appetizers, great finger food, and I can... that Blitz burger is so juicy, I can taste it from here. All right, without further ado, from Habs Eyes on the Prize, Andrew Zadarnowski. What's going on?
How's it going, Tony? Nice to see you here on the Sick Podcast.
I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been enjoying these playoffs. You know what? My playoffs started a long time ago when I went to see the Lions de Trois-Rivières when their first inaugural season make the playoffs in the ECHL. You know me, it's a small kind of sweetheart of mine, the ECHL, and I enjoyed that. It was a great presentation, great atmosphere. They got a great thing going on there. And then we had the playoffs in the AHL right now with the Laval Rockets and the amazing like crowd support. It's just a swell of support that the Montreal Farm Club is seeing, not having made the playoffs in how many years.
They tie their series with Springfield at 1 game apiece. After dropping game 1, they win game 2 by a score of 4-2. I have to tell you, not too many people are talking about him right now, but Jean-François Houle deserves a lot of credit for the way he has that team playing. I mean, their defense it's unbelievable. It's playoff style hockey.
The job he's done is tremendous, and maybe he's a bit of an unsung hero here. He replaced a guy who was very bombastic, who was very media friendly, in Joël Bouchard, who was a media darling because he was so eloquent and loved talking for a long time and was very charismatic. And when Jean-François Houle took over, he was kind of a lesser known person, maybe not as much of a reputation as Joël Bouchard had coming in. He's not as charismatic, doesn't kind of draw you in as much, but he's a proper coach. He's done very good coaching for this team, and what he's done for this playoff run and during this entire season is that he managed to get the veterans on board to his plan. He got the rookies playing to the system, to the structure, so the important thing with an AHL team is you have all these different layers of experience and players coming in raw and players that are kind of, the AHL career players, and then you have those guys that are bumped down from the NHL to the AHL who may come in with a bit of resentment or
Yeah.
come in kind of half-ass it. Jean-François Houle has managed to get all of them on the same page, and that's to his credit as a coach, as an
Yeah.
AHL coach.
And that includes Caden Primo, who was awesome on Saturday night in the loss, stopped 33 of 35 on Sunday night in the win in game 2. And I want to talk about Caden Primo because a month ago, Caden Primo was a question mark. 2 months ago and 3 months ago is probably an even bigger question mark. A year and a half ago, he was maybe like a prime, a really, really good prospect. So he went like this, and then he went like this, and now he's going back up again. It really has been a roller coaster, but he's really playing really good hockey right now. And there's a lot of talk about the Canadiens wanting to make a splash in the 2022 NHL Amateur Draft and maybe make a couple of moves and add another player in the top 10 and stuff like that. And a lot of people keep asking, well, what are the Canadiens going to give up? Well, I don't know if they're going to be willing to give him up, but I think it's quite possible that other teams will ask for Caden Primo, among other players.
Possibly. I haven't heard any talk of moving Primo, but to your first point, absolutely. It's been a roller coaster ride for him thus far. This season alone has been a tough one on him. We kind of know the pains that he went through when he got put in a very difficult position with the Montreal Canadiens during the season when they were at their absolute lowest, and he was in nets for that period. Coming back, what is happening in these playoffs? He didn't even start the first game of the playoffs. The coach, he just came back fresh from Montreal with all the still licking his wounds. Jean-François Houle went with Kevin Poulin to start the first game. That wasn't by accident. That was by design because Kevin Poulin was playing with such high confidence in himself, finished off the season for the Laval Rocket, whereas Caden Primo, he was still kind of had a lot to kind of get back in terms of his confidence. But thankfully or by design, games 1 and 2 were back-to-backs. So we gave Kevin Poulin that first start. Kevin Poulin, unfortunately, they lost that game. Caden Primo came in the next night, put up 40 saves, and then the rest is history, as they say. He regained his confidence in that first game, his first start in the playoffs. He gained his coach's confidence. He gained his players' confidence, and they've been riding him ever since. I mean, look at his stats in 9 games. A 191 goals against average, 939 save percentage. Compared that to the regular season where he had a 294 goals against average. That's and 909 save percentage. A 909 save percentage is below replacement level, especially in the AHL. So pulling 939 in the playoffs is just truly remarkable.
Unbelievable.
What a turnaround for him.
You're right. Speaking of goalies, speaking of pain, and hopefully a turnaround, what is PRP?
Well, now we're moving on to Carey Price, the big hot topic for the Montreal Canadiens. There was conversations this past week when he won his Bill Masterson, and obviously Kent Hughes also had a bit of a Q&A with the media, and we found out that Carey Price doesn't know if he's going to be ready to start the season. We don't know if he's coming back at all. We also found out that he went to get some medical treatments done on his knee, including PRP, platelet-rich plasma, which is an injection of a concentrate of your own blood into the knee. Who has those? Well, it's any athlete that has a job where the demand on the joints is extreme. You see a lot of tennis players have this sort of treatment, and now we're hearing that Carey Price has this treatment on his knee. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Is it a thing to worry about? I think so. He said it himself that this injury is taking longer to heal than a previous similar injury about 5 years ago. So as the body gets older, you know this, I know this, the body takes a longer time to heal, and in his case, he doesn't know if he's going to be ready to start the season. He says he's training as if he is planning on it.
Yeah.
But when he was talking, I didn't hear the confidence that he was going to be back. I heard the desire, but there was something there that the confidence, I think, is it's not there.
I'm not so sure I would bet on it, but if I did on Betway for the love of the game, and you sign up, by the way, and deposit on Betway for a 100% deposit bonus, the easiest sports book for Canadians. E-transfers are accepted almost immediately. I would put down $1 or $2 that Carey Price has played his last game. And of course, he's doing these injections of PRP because there was a lot of pain even after playing those 5 games. He went back to see his surgeon. They discussed the possibility of doing another surgery. And before they're getting to that point, he's trying the injections of PRP, which I've been doing injections of 8.6, and I need to pee. But anyway, so that's me. All right, okay. I thought that was a little funny, a little tacky, but it was funny.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Thank you. Hey, you know what? Some are better than others. All right, okay. Let's get back to the Rocket for a second, because Caden Primo's not the only one catching everyone's attention. You know who's catching Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon's attention, and even Marty St. Louis internally? I think is Jesse Alonan, who had 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points in the 4-2 win in Game 2, leading the way. Let's bring up his chart, courtesy of HockeyDB.com. There you have it. Jesse Alonan, drafted 35th overall in the second round of the 2018 NHL Draft. You're looking at just over 6 feet, 22 years old, will turn 23 in October, shoots right. He's a right winger. I think he could play either wing. Had 14 goals, 22 assists, and 36 points in 52 games in the regular season, and has 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in 10 games in the playoffs. This guy can skate. This guy can shoot. This guy is reliable. I think this guy has a home with the Montreal Canadiens next season, Andrew. But the big question is, on which line and playing with who?
Oof, that's a difficult one. I mean, first of all, Jesse Alonan, like you mentioned, great skater. His shot is remarkable. We saw it when he scored with the Montreal Canadiens this season. He was called up, played, I don't know how many, a few games there, but he had that 1 goal, and it was just a major league shot. Major league shot. He definitely is capable of playing at the NHL. As a regular, I'm not completely sold on him yet. He did play his best playoff game so far tonight, when for the Laval Rocket with the goal and 2 assist performance. And he started the playoffs on the second line, got bumped up to the top line based on this play. Next season, where would he fit? I mean, it really depends on who the third center is. I mean, right now on the Montreal Canadiens, you're looking at Suzuki and Dvorak as your 2s. Are Ryan Poehling and Jake Evans still your other 2 centers? Are they going to try to bolster it with maybe another veteran in free agency? I don't know. Jesse Alonan needs a guy to set him up. He needs a setup guy. Is the setup guy Christian Dvorak? I think Christian Dvorak is capable, but not necessarily the perfect guy for it. Jake Evans isn't that guy for him. They're not going to put him with Nick Suzuki on the top line. I don't think he's a top line player in the NHL.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to can he find chemistry with someone on the second or third line? They're not going to put him on the fourth line. I'm sick of seeing kind of, talented but so-so guys on the fourth line. I think I'm done with that experiment. He's got to basically come to camp and hopefully get paired with a center who can set him up. I mean, Jesse Alonan can skate the puck into the zone, but he needs a guy to give the puck off to, and he needs someone to put the puck on a stick. I don't know what the answer is there.
All right. I was taking a look at your Twitter feed, and I noticed that you took a look at Shane Wright, Juraj Slafkovsky, and Logan Cooley, who by all accounts pretty much are the consensus top 3 picks in the draft. We don't know the order just yet. And you gave your opinion when they'll play in the National Hockey League. So out of the 3, who is the one that you think will make the jump to the National Hockey League first?
I mentioned Juraj Slafkovsky. I really think he's the one that's capable of sticking in the NHL purely from a physical level. He's got the body, 6'4", coming in at 218 pounds or so, 220. That's a body that's kind of will be fine in the NHL. He's got the talent. He definitely has a lot of shooting ability. I'm just not worried about him from a physical perspective. Someone like a Logan Cooley, 5'10", 174. that's a small frame. I know he's in the U.S. He's going through the NCAA program. The NCAA program will probably mean he's going to be there for a couple of seasons.
Yeah.
But Juraj Slafkovsky, just because of his frame, I'm not worried about him being in the NHL next season. You'd be surprised how much heat I took for that tweet. A lot of people just kind of inferred different things from it. Like I'm saying Juraj Slafkovsky, is the best guy in the draft, or that Montreal has to draft him or not. There was no opinion in that tweet. It was just my
Yeah.
thoughts on when they would start in the NHL. And it's three great players, and Montreal's going to get one of them, and they're going to be happy.
Well, Andrew, you know this. If you've been paying attention to Twitter over the last month or so, anyone who has an opinion that the Canadiens should draft Slafkovsky over Shane Wright for whatever reason is getting just absolutely obliterated from people. I don't even know why. And I like Shane Wright. And you know what? In the end, I'll trust the Canadiens pick. But this pick is not unanimous. Juraj Slafkovsky has had an amazing last 6 months at the Olympics and at the World Championships, has shown to be a dominant player at times versus men. And it's not a unanimous pick, Shane Wright at number one. I don't know why people are getting upset, but they really are. But anyway, I think most scouts would actually share your opinion that Slafkovsky can play in the National Hockey League next year. It'll take Shane Wright a year more, and it'll take Logan Cooley probably a couple of years more. So two things. Number one, in the end, who do you think the Canadiens are going to pick?
It's a hard one. I'm looking at the three main horses. I don't think they're going to go for the top defenseman in the draft. For me, the top defenseman is David Jiricek.
Nemec or Jiricek,
yeah, one of those two. I don't think they're going to go that low unless the strategy is to trade down, trade that first overall pick. Then you pick one of those guys. You're going to be happy with it, and you're going to be happy with whatever you get for your first round overall. It's not impossible, but you don't trade your first overall pick. I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
In terms of who Montreal is going to go for, I just have a hard time bypassing the overall talent of a Shane Wright. Yes, Juraj Slafkovsky, he can be kind of that Anze Kopitar miss where they went for Carey Price instead and didn't go for the power forward. But when you have a guy that's just so skilled as Shane Wright, it's hard to go past that. It's just really hard. So, my money's on Wright.
Unless the Canadiens draft a winger and they make a trade to go out and try and get a centerman. We'll get to that in just a second. But let's say they draft Shane Wright. All right. You said it'll take him an extra year before he plays in the National Hockey League. Yep. Will that year be in the OHL, or would you see him going to Europe?
Well, traditionally speaking, these players go back to junior in the OHL, but I have absolutely nothing against a player like that trying in Europe, playing for a pro team in Switzerland, let's say, kind of following the Austin Matthews route. Yeah. I think Austin Matthews, as much as we, like to lean on the Leafs and their fans, it's fun. It's fun. It's a fun little rivalry. I think Austin Matthews did a very brave and groundbreaking thing when he went overseas to play in Europe in his draft year. I think it's a unique way of developing because Shane Wright can't play in the AHL next season. He's only going to be 19 years old. He's not eligible to play for the Laval Rocket. So what do? Do you send him back to junior where does he have anything left to learn in junior? That's a question mark. That's something the scouts are going to have to think about. That's something that Kent Hughes will have to think about. Talk it over with the Frontenacs. See if he's what their plan is. Are they planning on being a competitive team next year? Or as junior is very cyclical, where you're good for 1 year and then you kind of go down for 4 years while you build back up. So at what point are the Frontenacs at with next season? So there's gonna be a lot of things to consider if they decide to go that route with Shane Wright.
It appears the Montreal Canadiens asked him in the interviews the week of the Combine last week if he'd be willing to go to Europe to play with and versus men. So anyway, look, there's players that played the full 4 years of junior hockey. It worked out. Nick Suzuki is a perfect example. In his fourth season, he was awesome in the regular season. He was awesome in scoring in the playoffs. He was the MVP, leading his team to a championship. And there's those examples, like you just said, of Austin Matthews of going to play in Europe. And that's worked out as well for a couple of players. All right. Okay. It's the Sick Podcast, and you can follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter at the Sick Podcast. and of course, even on Instagram, on all our social media channels. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel and let your friends know about it. Support the podcast. All right. If you love us, you will, and we appreciate it. Send us messages. Just tell us sick, and we'll know that you love us. All right. Okay. So now let's just say they don't draft the centerman and they draft the winger because they have identified a centerman that they believe they'd like to bring into the fold here in Montreal and can do the trick. I'm talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's funny because his name came up on the podcast on Sunday morning, and someone asked me and said, hey, what if Columbus would package Dubois and picks? And I said, yeah, it could be a possibility, forgetting that Columbus had actually traded Dubois in the Liney deal, of course, and Pierre-Luc Dubois is a member of the Winnipeg Jets, and he had a real good year for the Jets, but he's unrestricted free agent. The great Elliot Friedman of Sportsnet tells us that the Jets have not began contract talks with Pierre-Luc Dubois yet. I don't know why. It looks like they want to prepare for a rebuild, but you can do a rebuild with a 23-year-old centerman, can you not? Before we get to him, let's bring up his stats, once again, courtesy of HockeyDB.com. There you have it. Pierre-Luc Dubois, drafted 3rd overall in the 2016 NHL draft. The Canadiens wanted to land him for a very, very long time. Remember, that's the year they traded Subban. It looked like they wanted to make a deal with Columbus at the time. No, it was with Edmonton. They wanted to make a deal with Edmonton. Remember that? Because they were convinced that Edmonton was going to, there was going to be a chance for, I think Edmonton had the 4th pick. And they
you're going to have to remind me here. Yeah, I'm totally drawing a blank on this story.
No, hold on a second. Was it Edmonton? It was the Puljujarvi pick, right? Because Jarmo Kekalainen, remember that? Everyone thought that Jarmo Kekalainen was going to draft Jesse Puljujarvi because Puljujarvi had played in Finland.
Right.
And the Canadiens were talking trade with the Edmonton Oilers, trading PK Subban to try and get the 4th pick overall, because with the 4th pick overall, they wanted to draft Pierre-Luc Dubois because they were convinced that Matthews was going to go number 1, Liney was going to go number 2, Puljujarvi was going to go number 3 to Columbus, and they wanted to draft Pierre-Luc Dubois at number 4. Anyway, that trade with Edmonton never materialized, and it's a good thing that it didn't, because Pierre-Luc Dubois was taken. He went number 3 to Columbus. But anyway, so those are his stats coming off a season of 28 goals, 32 assists, 60 points in 81 games. It's the most goals he scored at the National Hockey League level. It's the 2nd most assists. It's the most points. It leads you to believe that things are only going to get better for him. 23 years old, will turn 24 in a couple of weeks. 6'2", well over 200 pounds. My question to you is, should Kent Hughes go after Pierre-Luc Dubois and Andrew Zadarnowski? What would you be willing to give up for him?
That's a good question. I mean, first of all, logistically speaking, first thing that pops into my head is, how are they going to fit him under the cap? Currently, they're already over the cap if you look at cap friendly. Now, we know that doesn't take into account Shea Weber being potentially on LTIR all of next season, Carey Price being on LTIR all of next season. There's cap reasons why fitting a high ticket player like that may be challenging for now. But if we were talking Pierre-Luc Dubois, I don't see why Kent Hughes would at least dangle their second first round pick. They got Calgary's first round pick, I think, this season. And so obviously see what that's worth to some people. Obviously we'll have to package it up a little bit. So if you're getting a forward in, you maybe want to trade another forward for him, a forward prospect. I wonder if someone like Sean Farrell would draw any interest. Sean Farrell and their second first. We know Sean Farrell is doing extremely well for Team USA
Yeah.
at the World Championships. He's an NCAA All-Star, and he's coming up. He's probably another year away from the NHL. Kent Hughes has a pretty solid feeling on who this Sean Farrell kid is, having seen him play quite a lot. So if he has any doubt in his mind that this prospect will not meet expectations at the NHL level based on his current play, I would totally sell high on him. So if a Sean Farrell and what's Calgary's pick right now, 23rd overall, something along those lines, 23rd overall plus Sean Farrell, does that equal an RFA Pierre-Luc Dubois? Maybe, but you're not giving up. You're not giving Winnipeg a roster player at that point. So Winnipeg must be willing to go through a rebuild in that case. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they're headed in that direction as it is.
Yeah, no, you're probably right about that. Okay, so yes or no, Pierre-Luc Dubois, you see it happening?
I definitely see him asking about it out of curiosity. If Montreal brings him in, I would not be against it. I would be all for it. And you know what? Circling back to the Jesse Alonan winger and who might be work with him, I wonder if a Dubois wouldn't be a nice guy for him.
Andrew Zadanowski, you can join me on this podcast anytime. Thanks for doing it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Tony. Have a great one. Cheers.
You're very welcome. All right, bud. Have a good one. There you have it. I'm Marinaro. Tell your friends about this podcast. It's sick. Ciao.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by 8.6, Intense by Nature, and Lacage. If the last time you went to Lacage was when the Habs won the Cup, it's time you went back to Lacage. The menu will surprise you.